Howdy everyone, my name is Shnoodle and since it's October, that means it's the spooky month. Scary zombies, skeletons, bears, like Freddy Fazbear. Pretty Fazbear. Five Nights at Freddy's. I've always felt the series has had a lot of very interesting characters over the years. And while yes, a lot of these characters' personalities and motives are left up to interpretation, I don't think it necessarily takes away from them, especially because the series was built off the idea of theorizing. Being able to figure out these characters through environmental storytelling and secrets is something I seriously enjoy doing. The issue is, sometimes you start to see the cracks, and you're forced to watch as an interesting character eventually becomes unrecognizable. On an unrelated note, Ennard. Being the antagonist of FNAF's sister location, they're simply one of those characters that are so fascinating to me, and clearly many others. I can't help but feel the time has not served this character well. Speaking of time, assuming this video comes out when it's supposed to, it should be October 7th, which means it's FNAF's sister location's 9th anniversary, so there really isn't a better time to make this video unless I want to wait another year. So, I won't waste any more time, and I'll just get straight into it. To really understand Ennard, it's probably best to start at the beginning. Sister Location has always been one of the most interesting games in the FNAF series, with it feeling like the first to really break away from the status quo, for better and for worse. While it is a heavily flawed game when it comes to the gameplay and some of the new ideas it brings to the table, I don't think I would ever really call it a bad game. One of the things I've always appreciated was the art direction of the game, with it clearly having heavy sci-fi elements that are very reminiscent of Scott's older games, with an easy comparison to The Desolate Hope. I could honestly go on and on about the art direction of this game, because it's one of the things that I really appreciate about it, but I want to focus on one aspect, with that being Ennard, with their design being one of the things I love most about this character. Despite being fully made out of wires and a mask, it seems way more human than any other character we've seen in the series. Even compared to the more human-like animatronics, there's just something so much more off-putting about him. Or them? Non-binary? If they're non-binary, why are they a robot? Robots are all binary! Oh! I actually say they because Ennard is made up of a few animatronics, being an amalgamation of animatronics. Which reminds me a lot how people thought Springtrap was going to be the salvage pieces of old animatronics. You'll never guess what they decided to call him. But I guess Ennard isn't that far off, with them literally being the innards of the other animatronics. Speaking of the animatronics, it's probably best I go over each of them before fully going in-depth on my thoughts about Ennard, because to truly understand them, we have to understand each of these four. Or one, really. With this aspect being one of Ennard's biggest strengths and greatest flaws, being the fact that Baby is such a large part of its character, with the three other animatronics taking a very small role when it comes to Ennard itself. But to best understand this, let's actually go over these characters. First is obviously Baby, standing at a whopping 7'2", being an inch taller than Shaquille O'Neal, and being the first introduced in Night 2. After the system shuts down, she acts as a protector from the Biddy Babs, even guiding us through the environment that we're new to, with us being Mike, as many of you should know. And, as you also should know, Baby is Elizabeth. I'm very sorry to the one guy who didn't know this, but to be fair, this is a 9-year-old game, so womp womp. Despite us not seeing her until the final night, Baby is probably the most interesting character in this game, with her being so manipulative and calculated, but you can still very much tell there's still just a little girl inside of her, with her clearly being smart from her time being trapped down here, trying to escape over the years. But in Night 4 especially, we really get to see her more childish side come out. They're seeming so bitter towards the player. And from the final ending of the game, we learn that she most likely thought Michael was William at this time. With this game very clearly shown, the animatronics don't have very good feelings towards William for obvious reasons. We learn in the future games that the animatronics in Sister Location most likely have a fusion of Remnant and possibly other children inside of them, with us specifically knowing Baby definitely has one, with it being Elizabeth, and potentially Funtime Freddy, which will come up later. And despite it never really being confirmed, we can most likely assume the two others also have kids possessing them. This might not be true, but I feel like it really takes away from their characters, especially Ballora, considering in this game, other than Baby, she has the most personality. With one point I specifically want to point out is her song. Now, for the longest time, I never knew this song was official. I always assumed it was something like the Springlock audio, being fan-made, but no. And for you guys to really understand why I like it so much, I'll let you listen to the full thing for yourself.
Why do you hide inside your walls when there is music in my halls? All I see is an empty room, no more joy, an empty tomb. It's so good to sing all day, to dance, to spin, to fly away. Is someone there? Is it time for the show? I can hear someone creeping through my room. Perhaps not.
This song has always been so hauntingly beautiful to me, with it just being one of those FNAF things that no one ever talks about, with the only time I've ever heard discussion over it being about it possibly being a connection to her being Mrs. Afton, which is a cool theory, and I've always been on the fence whether or not I've really believed it. But I feel like there's so much more to this song, really showing Ballora as a character of her own, instead of just another piece of Ennard. But the same can't be said about the two others, with that being Funtime Freddy and Funtime Foxy, with Funtime Foxy getting the real short end of the stick, only getting one section dedicated to her, with that being the crawling section, and that's basically it for him. She's also the only character out of the main four who doesn't get a voice actor in this game, with him being completely silent. Their only lore significance is being a scripted jump scare, and possibly being the one who put Michael in the Springlock suit, but other than that, they can basically just be cut out of the game, which is a shame because I feel like they have a really good design. But then you also have Funtime Freddy, who, while doesn't play a major role in the story, does give a lot of personality, with him being voiced by Kellen Goff, which is one of the reasons I feel this character gets so much appreciation in the fandom, and by the creators, with them even being the face of the game despite the fact Baby has way more lore significance when it comes to the actual story of the game. They're just such a fun character that the series decides they love this guy. And, while I get it, but why? But why this guy? He's silly. I like him. He's cool. But, why? 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 I feel you'll probably best understand my frustration the more I go into this video. But with the basic understanding of those characters out of the way, I think it's time to really talk about Ennard. With our first real introduction to the character possibly being every night of the game, with Baby technically being Ennard, but also with the mask being above your head every night, with it seeming like they're almost watching over you throughout the entire game, right there, in plain sight. Oh, what? Yeah, what? Yeah, there's a little bit there. I'm sorry about that. Oopsie, LOL. With it showing how Ennard was always in plain sight, but us not realizing it until the final night, where the mask goes missing, which is always a detail I really loved about this game. Where the first time we really see Ennard is on the last night, where if we mess up fixing Baby, they jump scare you. I've always appreciated this design despite the fact we only really get to see it once, or twice, or 10 times if you keep messing up the game. Which definitely wouldn't happen if it wasn't for the fact these buttons are so damn small. But other than that, you don't really ever get to see this design again. Which I would say is a shame if it wasn't for the fact their full design looks so... I'm gonna rant about this character design for... just for a quick second. Their design is just so perfectly imperfect. And while I know I mentioned this previously, the human likeness of this character's design just makes it so great to me. Like when they put themselves together, they try to look as human as possible, with their chest looking like a rib cage, their arms, their legs. Everything about this looks like it's meant to build the exact shape of a human. Even with the fingers and feet, you can tell that they were trying to look human. And with the mask really pulling this whole design together. In lore, there really isn't a reason for them to wear this mask, considering their whole plan is to scoop Michael and wear them. But, I don't know, aura farming or whatever. Speaking of, let's actually talk about the endings of the game. In the main ending, after listening to Baby and following her to the scooping room, we learn that Baby has been manipulating Michael the entire time, removing the wool from his eyes. You could even say there, removing the steel wool from his eyes. Come on. That was fun. And with that, Michael's back home. As the screen slowly comes to the mirror, as we see his shadow. And then... I've always loved this ending, being obviously a reversal of what happened to William, and possibly a reference to what Fungi says in the first FNAF game.
Hey, listen, I had an idea. If you happen to get caught and want to avoid getting stuffed into a Freddy suit, try playing dead. You know, go limp. Then there's a chance that maybe they'll think that you're an empty costume instead. Then again, if they think you're an empty costume, they might try to stuff a metal skeleton into you. I wonder how that would work. Yeah, never mind. Scratch that. It's best just not to get caught. Okay, I'll leave you to it. See you on the flip side.
Also, not to go back to glazing Ennard, as the kids say, but just look at them in this ending, fully draped in shadow, with the main thing we can see from them is their eyes. They're just so intimidating and fascinating as a character. But to really understand this character, we also have to talk about the other ending. In this ending, after Ennard tries to guide us to the scooping room, and we choose to go a different direction, we end up finding our way to the private room, which can only be accessed after beating the Baby minigame, where you enter a one-on-one night with Ennard, with him trying to get in. Also, something I've never seen anyone bring up is the fact that this room looks surprisingly like the one in Security Breach, with it sharing the 2 doors on each side and a vent in the top middle, with the room also having 3 monitors. Now, I don't believe this has any real lore significance. I just thought I should bring it up because I'm surprised no one else has. After getting to this room, they start to question you, asking why you didn't trust them, until eventually they switch up, saying them. They start to explain that they need to get out, that they won't get another chance after becoming what they are now, being this amalgamation. They know if they're caught as this, they'll most likely be dismantled, so they have to get you. They have to be free, so they'll convince you to come out no matter what it means, even if that means using Elizabeth's voice. Now, in the game, you also have to remember, while they don't know this is Michael, they do think it's William, willing to use the voice of their dead child to lure them out. But even with that, you eventually finish the night and get to go home, with them saying this before you end the night.
I will find a way out.
And with that, Michael's home again, but slowly, someone approaches. The way Ennard slowly drags himself in, showing they meant it when they said they'd find a way out. This ending always felt like Ennard did this strictly for revenge. There was no way they could get Michael back to the scooping room. And since they know without a body, there's no way they will be able to not get dismantled. You can only imagine what they do to him, with this ending feeling so bitter, with Michael most likely getting ripped apart by Ennard, just for the same thing to eventually happen to them as well. It's such a sad and bitter ending, and I'm surprised no one talks about it, because while yes, it's obviously non-canon, I feel this ending does such a great job showing how sad and angry and desperate Ennard is for escape, that they're willing to leave knowing they will die, if it means taking you out with them. Also, Ennard has funky eyebrows. Hee hee hee, funny. Sorry, I needed something to, lighten the mood. And that was Ennard and Sister Location. While there is a few issues still with them, with the fact that the other animatronics don't play as large of a role as they should, maybe with future games they'll be able to build off of that idea. Besides, I'm sure it's all uphill from here. In Pizzeria Simulator, we get to see both Baby and the remains of Ennard. And while I know Baby is now separated, she plays such a large role in who this character is, it really wouldn't make sense not to also talk about her. First, I want to go over their designs, because they might be the best aspect of these characters. With Baby, or Scrap Baby, being very clearly worse for wear, with her seeming to use pieces from the old sister location, and possibly scraps of her old body, with her also using the very thing that killed her as an arm. But she has a tiara and skates, so it's okay. I honestly always liked that element of her design, because it felt like, deep down, that little girl is still inside of her, both metaphorically and literally. And then we have Ennard, or as they're known in this game, Molten Freddy. Non-binary and a chosen name? I didn't know we're playing Five Nights at Wokie's. What's next? Pronouns! Molten Freddy's design is honestly phenomenal. With Baby gone and not having someone to guide them, they fall apart, with their previous body being almost unrecognizable, losing basically every aspect of the humanoid design they used to have. Which I really like, because it really shows how much they've fallen apart, with obviously the body being a very clear example, but also the face. Where Ennard, despite the face being a bit messy, you could tell it was still a face. With Molten Freddy, it doesn't even seem like they have a face, with the only thing seeming to hold the mask up being loose wires, with the only real face being maybe one eye. And you can see this best in their secret image, with them really being fully fallen apart. Another child star lost to alcohol and drugs. You also might be wondering, without Baby, who's the voice of Molten Freddy? Maybe it's Ballora. They're being very lore significant and feeling like so much potential was put into that character, with her relationship with Baby and it's Funtime Freddy. I always felt this decision really didn't make any sense. I get Kellen Goff, he's a cool guy, he does the cool Freddy voice, but with Baby having such a manipulative personality just to go to Funtime Freddy doesn't make any sense to me. And while they do have some good lines...
Thanks for letting me join the party. I'll try not to disappoint. Oh, what a pleasant surprise! One big happy family! Knock knock! I'm here! Together again!
I feel you could have done so much with this character, with them being three characters unable to control each other. No, they're just Funtime Freddy. Look, I like Funtime Freddy. He's cool, he's funny, he's German sometimes. I like him, but why? Okay, calm down, Shnoodle. Maybe let's look at Baby. Maybe her character has evolved, with her being back by herself again with an actual body. Maybe we can really get to see this character at her best.
I will make you proud, Daddy.
The last time we saw this character, she was willing to kill her own father to escape. But now she's a daddy's girl, with this character really not making any sense. She plays so smart throughout the game, talking about us not knowing who led us here. This grand plan that seems to be built up, with that obviously being what Henry's doing. But it seems Elizabeth doesn't know that, with it almost seeming like she thinks William put this all together. Which, he's right there. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little stressed out. Perhaps I judged Molten Freddy too fast. Perhaps there's more complexity to this character I just haven't realized yet. Besides, this game was meant to really wrap up the whole series, so... Actually, I heard Candy Cadet had something he wanted to say.
Fruit punch for everyone.
Oh, so this is why you don't buy things that are marked down. Candy Cadet tells us 3 different stories, all relating to one another, each being about 5 things all being put together. But a thing I feel people leave out is one major aspect of them, the protagonist of these stories. With each story being how someone had good intentions, but was foolish. With a man who adopted 5 kids, just for the burglar to break into his house. The kid who had 5 kittens, but couldn't let himself get rid of the snake. A girl who could save 1 kid, if it meant using 1 key, but melted them all together. To have only sealed her in the children's fate. I think this is meant to be Henry. How his mistakes led to these events. He's partially to blame for these 5 kids' deaths. He trusted the snake. Honestly, while I have a few issues with Molten Freddy, if it wasn't for the fact they're just Funtime Freddy's personality, I feel I'd have less of an issue with them. But unfortunately, with the fire unfolding, it's unlikely we'll ever see Ennard again. Oh god damn it! In Security Breach, we're introduced to a new character, one that lives deep under the Pizzaplex, living in an old pizzeria made of wires and other animatronics, being none other than the Tangled. What, who else would it be? But I'll be calling them the Blob, both because I prefer the fan name, and we actually already have a FNAF character called Tangled. When first seeing this character, many assumed it was Molten Freddy, being an assortment of wires in Funtime Freddy's face, and with Springtrap still alive, it wouldn't be surprising. But you might come to realize, Molten Freddy does not have Funtime Freddy's face, being more like scraps put together to resemble his face. So, who is this? Well, many believe this is basically a pile of pure agony, with it collecting old animatronic pieces to build more of itself. So what's with the face? Of all characters, why the one who probably makes the least sense to express agony? He's so jolly. It feels like its only purpose is to make people think it's Molten Freddy. Sometimes I feel like this series tries to be complicated just for the sake of being complicated. But even with all of this, I thought this would be an interesting new villain to take on, with it being the manifestation of all the terrible things that happened at Freddy Fazbear's Entertainment over the years, and with this seeming to take William, who might have the most agony of any character in the series. You would think they would take advantage of this character that is quite literally larger than life, but then with Ruin, this ending was put in a state of limbo, with Gregory drawing this ending making it not canon, but the secret underground area still exists, with Burntrap's charging station, and we see the Blob for a split second in the game. So now, the closest successor to Ennard might never get to see any of his potential used. But maybe one day we'll see it return, because while I think many people either dislike or don't care for this character, I think it could be a really interesting character to use, with it living to only collect more agony, being the true amalgamation of characters people wanted since FNAF 3. This also doesn't do any disservice to these characters, with their soul still being passed on, with the puppet's mask losing the tears that represents its possession. I feel this character has so much potential, especially because a big part of FNAF is the cover-ups, pushing every failure down. But with the Blob, it's every mistake they've ever made, slowly crawling back to the surface, with the only thing it's seeking is revenge. Ennard is probably one of the best characters in the FNAF series, despite not being around for that long. Besides, it's probably for the best. I can't stand to see Pizzeria Sim's beautiful ending get any worse with time. If Ennard were to ever return, I hope it would either be how they did it in Help Wanted, or possibly a Sister Location remake. Out of all the original FNAF games, it probably needs it the most. Being able to fix its gameplay, possibly even structuring it like they did with Ruin. I think it would legitimately be a great gift for, I don't know, a game's 10th anniversary? I doubt Steel will do it, but if they did, I would forgive them for every criticism I've ever given them. And I'm only partially joking. But that was my thoughts on Ennard. Plenty of ups and downs and all that. I'd honestly love to hear your guys' thoughts on them. And also, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm planning to post much more often, so if you want to see more like this, consider liking, subscribing, and yada yada, you know the drill by now. If you'll excuse me, I have to go. This video made me really want some Italian food, so I'll catch y'all later. Toodaloo.